Welcome to our newest episode about the Gladiators. Subscribe our channel and enjoy. In the ancient Roman Empire, the gladiator stood as a symbol of bravery, strength, and entertainment. These professional fighters were revered by the audience for their skillful combat techniques and unmatched ferocity in the arena. Gladiators were not just mere warriors, but performers who captivated the hearts and minds of the Roman spectators. They would engage in brutal and bloody combat with each other, wild animals, or even condemned criminals. The roar of the crowds would fill the arena, as they watched with awe and fascination the fierce battles unfolding before their eyes. These gladiators were not just fighting for their own glory or wealth, but also for the entertainment of the people. They had to undergo rigorous training to perfect their combat skills and to ensure they could withstand the brutality of their opponents. They would don intricate armor and wield weapons of various kinds, creating a spectacle of beauty and violence that the Roman audiences could not get enough of. Despite the danger and risks involved in this profession, many gladiators chose to follow this path, driven by the fame and fortune that awaited them if they emerged victorious. However, only the strongest and most skilled among them would survive the brutal battles, and even they were not exempt from injury or death. In essence, the gladiators were more than just fighters. They represented a unique combination of courage, skill, and showmanship, making them an integral part of ancient Roman culture and history. The year was 264 BCE, and Rome was still in its infancy as a city-state. The loss of a nobleman was a significant event, and the ruling class sought to commemorate his passing with an elaborate funeral procession. As part of this ceremony, a group of men were selected to engage in combat as a form of ritualistic mourning for the departed. This was the beginning of the gladiatorial games, an institution that would grow in popularity and grandeur over the centuries. The spectacle of skilled warriors battling to the death was a potent form of entertainment for the Roman people, who flocked to the amphitheaters in droves to witness the blood and glory of the arena. As the years went by, the gladiatorial games became more sophisticated and elaborate, with new types of fighters, weapons, and tactics being introduced to keep the audiences engaged. The games became an important part of Roman culture, and the gladiators themselves achieved a kind of celebrity status, with their feats of bravery and skill being celebrated in song and story. The word unquat, gladiator unquat, derives from the Latin word unquat, gladius, unquat, which means unquat, sword. Unquat. This is not surprising, as the sword was the primary weapon used by most gladiators in the arena. The gladius was a short sword with a pointed tip, ideal for close-range combat. It was the weapon of choice for Roman soldiers, and its use was eventually adopted by the gladiators who fought in the arena. The gladius was often paired with a shield, providing the gladiator with a means of defense as well as offense. The word unquat, gladiator unquat, therefore carries with it a sense of martial prowess and deadly skill. To be a gladiator was to be a master of the sword, a fearless combatant willing to face any opponent in the name of glory and entertainment. But the word also carries with it a sense of sacrifice and danger. To be a gladiator was to put one's life on the line, to risk injury, disfigurement, or death for the sake of the crowd's pleasure. The gladiatorial games were a brutal and unforgiving arena, where only the strongest and most skilled warriors could hope to survive. Thus, the word unquat, gladiator unquat, encapsulates the paradoxical nature of this ancient institution, a celebration of strength and bravery, but also a brutal reminder of the risks and costs of human combat. The gladiators were a diverse group of men who came from all walks of life, united by their willingness to enter the arena and face their opponents in deadly combat. Most were slaves, prisoners of war, or criminals, forced to fight for their lives as a form of punishment or entertainment. These unfortunate souls had little choice in the matter. They were taken from their homes, trained in the art of combat, and sent to the arena to face their foes. For them, the gladiatorial games were a brutal and unforgiving arena, a place where the only way out was through victory or death. But there were also free men who chose to become gladiators, driven by a desire for fame, fortune, or glory. These men saw the arena as a means to elevate their social status, to win the adoration of the crowds, or to make a name for themselves in the annals of history. These free men were often highly skilled fighters, drawn to the challenge and excitement of the gladiatorial games. They would undergo rigorous training and preparation, honing their combat skills and learning how to survive in the brutal world of the arena. For these men, the gladiatorial games were not just a punishment or a form of entertainment, they were a way of life. They embraced the danger and risk, the glory and the acclaim, that came with being a gladiator. They lived and died by the sword, striving to prove their worth and to earn their place in the pantheon of Roman heroes. The gladiators of ancient Rome were a diverse and multifaceted group, each with their own unique style, weaponry, and armor. From the heavily armored murmillo to the agile and nimble retiarius, each type of gladiator brought a distinct flavor to the arena, captivating audiences and inspiring awe with their skill and bravery. The murmillo, for example, was perhaps the most iconic of all the gladiators. He was heavily armed and armored, with a large, rectangular shield, a short sword, and a distinctive, crested helmet that resembled a fish. The murmillo was known for his strength and endurance, and his fights often involved slow, grinding battles of attrition. The retiraius, on the other hand, was the polar opposite of the murmillo. He was lightly armored, with only a net, a trident, and a dagger, and relied on speed and agility to outmaneuver his opponents. His fights were often fast-paced and exciting, with the retiraius darting in and out of range, using his net to trap and entangle his foes. Other notable types of gladiators included the throix, who was modeled after a Thracian warrior and armed with a curved sword and small shield, the secutor, who wore a distinctive helmet that resembled the head of a fish and was armed with a short sword and a small shield, and the hoplomachus, who was heavily armored and carried a spear and a small shield. Each type of gladiator brought a unique flavor to the arena, and the crowd delighted in watching them fight and compete against one another. It was a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of the Roman people, who had developed an entire system of combat and entertainment that still captures our imaginations today. Gladiators were not simply thrown into the arena without preparation. They were trained extensively in special schools called unquat, ludi, and quat, where they learned the skills and techniques they would need to survive in the brutal world of the arena. The ludi were run by experienced gladiators and trainers, who would teach their charges a wide variety of combat techniques, from sword fighting and wrestling to archery and mounted combat. They would also focus on endurance training, ensuring that their gladiators were physically fit and capable of enduring the grueling battles that awaited them. But the training in the ludi was not just about combat, it was also about showmanship. The gladiatorial games were as much about spectacle as they were about combat, and the crowds demanded a show that would captivate and thrill them. The gladiators were trained to put on a good show, to engage with the crowd, and to play up their victories and defeats for maximum effect. In the end, the training in the ludi was essential to the success of the gladiators. It gave them the skills, strength, and showmanship they needed to survive in the arena, and helped to ensure that they would be able to entertain and amaze the crowds that came to watch them fight. It was a testament to the ingenuity and sophistication of the Roman people, who had developed an entire system of combat and entertainment that continues to fascinate us to this day. The gladiatorial contests were held in massive, specially built arenas called unquat, amphitheaters unquat, which were designed to seat tens of thousands of spectators. These amphitheaters were some of the largest and most impressive structures in all of ancient Rome, and they played a central role in the social and cultural life of the city. The most famous of these amphitheaters was, of course, the Colosseum, which still stands today as a testament to the grandeur and power of ancient Rome. The Colosseum was a massive structure, capable of seating up to 50,000 spectators, and it played host to some of the most famous and brutal gladiatorial contests in history. But the Colosseum was not the only amphitheater in ancient Rome. In fact, there were many others, scattered throughout the city and the empire. Some were smaller, more intimate affairs, designed for more specialized or localized contests. Others were grander and more elaborate, designed to host massive, citywide celebrations and festivals. But regardless of their size or location, all of these amphitheaters were places of spectacle and wonder, where the gladiators could display their skills and bravery, and the crowds could cheer and jeer them to their heart's content. They were a vital part of the social fabric of ancient Rome, and their legacy can still be felt today in the many arenas and stadiums that dot our modern landscape. The gladiatorial games were not just about the gladiators themselves. They were often accompanied by a range of other spectacles designed to entertain the crowd and keep them engaged throughout the day. One of the most popular of these spectacles were the animal hunts, in which wild beasts such as lions, tigers, and bears were released into the arena to be hunted down by trained animal fighters. These hunts were often incredibly dangerous and brutal, and they were intended to showcase the bravery and skill of the hunters as well as the ferocity of the beasts. Music was also an important part of the gladiatorial games. Musicians would play during the intervals between bouts, providing a soundtrack to the spectacle unfolding in the arena. This music was often lively and upbeat, designed to keep the energy high and the crowd engaged. Other spectacles might include acrobatic performances, chariot races, and even reenactments of famous battles from history. All of these were designed to keep the crowd entertained and engaged throughout the day, ensuring that they would stay in their seats and continue to cheer on the gladiators as they battled for their lives. In the end, the gladiatorial games were much more than just a simple combat sport. They were a complex and sophisticated form of entertainment that brought together all the elements of ancient Roman society, from the brutality of war and conquest to the beauty of music and art. And while they may seem barbaric to us today, they remain a fascinating and enduring symbol of the power and complexity of ancient Rome. The gladiatorial games were often presided over by the emperor or other high-ranking officials, who would sit in a special box or platform called the Unquat, to watch the games and decide the fate of the gladiators. In some cases, the emperor himself would decide the fate of the defeated gladiators, while in other cases he might delegate that responsibility to one of his trusted subordinates. The decision could take a number of different forms. Sometimes the defeated gladiator would be allowed to live, while other times he might be granted mercy death by a special executioner. However, more often than not, the defeated gladiator would be killed in the arena, either by his opponent or by a specially trained executioner. This was seen as an important part of the spectacle, as it reinforced the idea that the gladiators were fighting not just for victory, but for their very lives. The fate of the defeated gladiator was not just a matter of life or death for the individual fighter. It was also an important symbol of the power and authority of the emperor or other high-ranking official who presided over the games. By deciding the fate of the gladiators, these officials were able to demonstrate their power and authority over the people of Rome, and reinforce their position as the ultimate arbiters of justice and morality in the city. While many gladiators were simply disposed of in mass graves after they were killed in the arena, some were given elaborate funerals if they were particularly popular or famous among the Roman people. These funerals could take many different forms, depending on the social status of the gladiator in question and the wishes of his sponsors or patrons. In some cases, the funeral might involve a procession through the streets of Rome, with the gladiator's body carried on a bier adorned with flowers and other symbols of honor. At other times, the funeral might take place in the amphitheater itself, with the body of the gladiator lying in state while mourners paid their respects. The funeral might also involve speeches, music, and other forms of public mourning, designed to honor the bravery and sacrifice of the fallen fighter. The elaborate funerals of popular gladiators were an important part of the culture of ancient Rome, as they served to reinforce the values of honor, bravery, and sacrifice that were so highly prized in Roman society. They also provided an opportunity for ordinary people to pay their respects to the gladiators who had entertained them and inspired them with their feats of skill and courage in the arena. While male gladiators were far more common in the arena, there were indeed some women who fought as gladiators in ancient Rome. These female gladiators were known as gladiatrices, and while they were a relatively rare sight, they did exist. Most gladiatrices were slaves or prisoners of war, just like their male counterparts, and were forced to fight in the arena for the entertainment of the crowds. However, there were also a small number of free women who chose to become gladiators, either for the thrill of the fight or as a means of making a living. The weapons and fighting styles of female gladiators were often similar to those of their male counterparts, although they were sometimes given lighter weapons or less restrictive armor to account for their smaller size and lesser physical strength. However, despite the challenges they faced, many female gladiators were highly skilled fighters who won the admiration of the Roman people for their bravery and fighting prowess. Despite their relative rarity, the existence of female gladiators challenges the popular perception of ancient Rome as a male-dominated society in which women played little or no role in public life. It shows that even in this highly patriarchal culture, there were some women who were able to break free of traditional gender roles and assert their independence and strength in a highly public arena. While most gladiators were little more than anonymous fighters, some did achieve fame and notoriety in their own time, and even became heroes and legends. Perhaps the most famous of these was Spartacus, who led a slave rebellion against Rome in 73 BCE. While Spartacus was not strictly a gladiator, he had been trained as one and had fought in the arena before escaping with a group of other slaves. After his escape, he became the leader of a large and growing group of rebels, and led them in a series of successful battles against the Roman army. Although Spartacus and his followers were eventually defeated, their rebellion has remained a powerful symbol of resistance against oppression and tyranny, and has inspired countless works of literature, art, and film over the centuries. Other famous gladiators include Commodus, the Roman emperor who famously fought in the arena himself, and Flamma, a Syrian gladiator who won his freedom after fighting in more than 30 gladiatorial contests and surviving them all. In 325 CE, the Roman Emperor Constantine I issued a decree that banned gladiatorial contests throughout the Roman Empire. The reasons for the ban are not entirely clear, but some historians speculate that it may have been part of Constantine's broader campaign to promote Christianity and suppress pagan practices. Despite the ban, however, it appears that gladiatorial games continued in some form in the Eastern Roman Empire, which later became known as the Byzantine Empire. While these games were not as large or as elaborate as the gladiatorial contests of the Roman Republic and early Empire, they still involved armed combat and were often staged for public entertainment. Over time, however, these games became increasingly unpopular, as attitudes towards violence and public spectacle shifted in the Byzantine Empire. By the 6th century, gladiatorial contests had largely disappeared from the Eastern Roman Empire, as they had from the rest of the Mediterranean world. Today, the legacy of the gladiators lives on in popular culture, as their exploits in the arena continue to capture the imaginations of people around the world. While the brutality and bloodshed of the gladiatorial contests may seem shocking to modern sensibilities, they remain an important part of our understanding of ancient Rome and the complex social and cultural forces that shaped the world of the past. Thank you for watching, subscribe our channel and see you in next episodes.